Welcome back. I want to show you some Terraform today, something called for each, and it's a bit like a for loop iterating over a number of objects like you get in programming. And here I want to show you an example of creating several S3 buckets, and each bucket is unique. We're looking here at terraform.tfrs, and you can see here we've got only one variable, S3 buckets, but this single variable is a map of object, and each object is an individual S3 bucket, and it's actually a key value pair, the key being the bucket name, it's before the equal sign, and after the equal sign the value is all of the configuration. So in this case we're keeping it simple. We've got the name as the key I mentioned. As part of the value we've got tags. We've also got a versioning block stating whether versioning is enabled, and if we have a particular attribute, an argument I should say, called MFA delete, if that's set, or if it's not set. You see, even here, the most simplest case I've got here, we've only got the tag set, we've got nothing related to versioning. Here we've got versioning enabled, but we don't have anything mentioned about MFA delete. It's not explicitly stated. This example here is going to take care of all of that. I wanted to show you first Terraform.tfr so you know we're working with 3 buckets, so you know up front that you're able to define in this manner, which is really powerful. You can use it not just on buckets, you can use it on EC2/VMs, you can use it on Kubernetes, node pools/node groups. Super powerful. Let's look at the rest of the code. So we're just looking at a TFRs there, but let's have a look what else we got in here. I'll show you first the provider.tf. There's nothing special here. It's just saying that we're using AWS in region US East 1. Let's go take a look at the resource block. So there's actually 2 here. So we've got here resource AWS S3 bucket, and this is an important first line here to say for each of that variable that I showed you earlier, then each key is going to be the bucket argument, which is bucket name for this particular resource, and then the tags argument is going to be assigned from each value of tags as it was defined within our variable objects. And then there's a separate resource here, because this is very common with many clouds. Like they used to stuff all of these different features like versioning and other stuff in one resource, but these days what you often have is you have a separate resource just for a different feature, and in there you say, well, I want to apply that on the bucket, and here's the configuration. Now this looks a bit more complicated. I'll tell you up front, I got this from AI. I didn't construct this myself, and I actually recommend these days, my workflow with Terraform is to ask AI exactly what I'm looking for, and I find it to just be super powerful, even for examples like this, which I wouldn't necessarily call this complex, but it's definitely upping the complexity from a base level of understanding. So it's saying here that for each of what's in here, the key values in my variable called S3 buckets, and basically it will only create this versioning resource if that versioning part of those objects is not equal to null. Okay, so if versioning is not even mentioned, this won't get created. If versioning is mentioned, this will get created. Assuming it is mentioned, then the bucket that we're talking about is this bucket, so each key, and then there's a versioning configuration. And remember that there were 2 arguments there. There was status and MFA delete, so each value of status. And this is slightly different because this depends on whether we've set it to be enabled or disabled. It's a little bit more complex logic. I'm not going to go into this. The AI gave me this, but I did ask it to explain it to me, of course. So that was resources. Let's have a quick look at the variables.tf. And remember, we looked at the TFRs already, and it maps exactly to this. So this will make a bit more sense now. We start up by saying that our variable S3 buckets is the type map of object. Remember, map is key value. In our case, the key was a bucket name. In our case, the value was the entire config, which corresponds to this. So tags is always there, but versioning is an optional. And if versioning is set, then you've got status and MFA delete, which are both optional. The first is a string, the second is MFA delete. And here you go. And that's how this works. You can study this in a bit more depth yourself if you would like, but let's go and see how this works now. So I've already done a Terraform init. Let's do a Terraform plan. And what I did was obviously I paused and resumed the video. So let's just go back up and have a look at this. Oh, by the way, it says here 5 to add. So this implies 3 buckets and 2 optional versioning configurations. So let's have a look here. So we go right to the top. We start off with that first bucket that was defined. It was this company audit reports. It will create this. That's the name, obviously. A lot of them are known after apply, which is pretty normal. It's got the tags that I asked for. This tags all is just the way that AWS does it. It's a little bit weird. Then we got the second bucket, dev test. Pretty similar, name and tags. Versioning is known after apply. Okay, we'll come back to that. And the third bucket, TV commercials, name and tags again. And it doesn't mention the versioning because this is kind of related to when it used to be a single resource type. We now have here 2 more resources created. One for this audit bucket, another for this TV commercials bucket. And you can see it's got the bucket associated and then the configuration, MFA delete, status, whatever. And that's how it works. We should take one more look, I think, at the Terraform.tfrs. And here it is. And you can see immediately why these two had the additional versioning resource created. This third one didn't, because it doesn't have, in our case, this here. And it also took into account the fact that MFA delete was not actually mentioned in the second one. What it did, the logic there is that it assumed it to be false. So that's the power of using for each. Super powerful. There is an alternative called count, and that doesn't use key value pairs. Instead it assigns an index. It kind of says bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3. It sort of doesn't assume that they're different. And if you remove one, the order shuffles what was previous. Let's say you delete the middle one, then the last one then goes to the last position, the middle position. So it's it's kind of legacy, really. You shouldn't really use count unless you've got a burning need to take advantage of a very few rare advantages that it has. These days most people are using for each instead, and they're setting up a map. Map is denoted by these braces here, and then you've got key value pairs. It's way better. You can do pretty much all of what you can do with count and even more. Hope you found that useful. It's just a teaser, really. I strongly suggest that you use AI to help you construct these, but also get to learn, know, and understand these, how they work as well, these concepts. Take care. Bye-bye.